As many of you know, the story behind is being turned into a book, which means I'm in the process right now of doing probably one of my favorite parts of making the podcast, which is doing a ton of research and preparation. Yeah, I'm a big dork like that. This week's episode will be one of the chapters in the book, but the information in the Inventor was one I found hard to keep to myself until the book came out. Even though we may curse at this week's topic sometimes, it's saved numerous lives and made driving much safer since its invention. I'm your host, Emily Prokop, and this is the story behind the traffic light. But first, a quick message from Livestream for the Cure, which I'll be part of this coming weekend on May 19th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Justin. We are the Epic Film Guys, and we'd like just a moment of your time to talk about an extremely important event coming up this May.
Last year, we hosted the Livestream for the Cure, a 12-hour livestream fundraiser where we raised $2,500 for the Cancer Research Institute.
86 cents out of every dollar raised goes to research toward finding a cure.
And this year, we're aiming to smash that goal, and we need your help to do it.
Join us from May 18th through the 20th for 30 hours of amazing live stream content from us and a whole host of amazing podcasters who will be joining us to try to reach $5,000.
For more information, please visit www.livestreamforthecure.com. Together, we can make a difference.
You may be sitting at a traffic light right now as you're listening to this. You may even be a little annoyed at the red light as you watch the cars that have the green light going along their way. But take a moment to be thankful for that light. It's probably saving you more time than you realize. When automobiles first came about in the 1800s, it took a while for them to catch on. In fact, when the Ford Model T was introduced in 1908, only 20% of the roads in the U.S. were paved. Cars didn't catch on as automobile makers had hoped, especially because many of the rules of the road we know today weren't established. It was reported that in the first 6 months of 1906, more Americans were killed in motor accidents than by the Spanish in the Spanish-American War. Certain states passed laws in an effort to reduce the number of injuries, such as Vermont requiring every motorist to have a person walk in front of a vehicle with a red flag. Others took it upon themselves to show their hatred for motorists by creating log barriers on roads, scattering glass, and even adding ditches to roads. But driving did offer a faster and more efficient way for people to get around. And in 1908, when Henry Ford introduced the Model T, and with that, the new mass production techniques, cars became more commonplace. And with that, so did accidents. If you want to see a video of what traffic looked like before traffic control really took off, I have a link in the show notes to a video showing horse-drawn carriages, automobiles, bikes, and pedestrians in the 1900s. And in it, pedestrians are pretty much playing Frogger with the vehicles. Luckily, cars didn't really go faster than 20 miles per hour at the time, but the video is still pretty cringeworthy. As you may already know, the popularity of automobiles did increase, and more people were trading in their horse-drawn buggies for them. But with the increase in automobiles came even more traffic and accidents. There were a few traffic guiding systems already in place around the world, like the signal outside of the Houses of Parliament in London in 1868 that had two arms, one reading caution and one reading stop, similar to a railroad crossing signal you might see today. At night, the signal used red and green gas lamps, which exploded a month after being installed, killing the policeman who was operating it. And in 1912, in Salt Lake City, Utah, a police officer named Lester Wire created a box that was connected to trolley and light wires for a signal featuring red and green lights. The first electric traffic signal was installed in Cleveland, Ohio in 1914, which was operated from inside a control booth. But the red, yellow, and green lights we know today were also born in Cleveland, but I'll get to that in a minute. Even in New York City, which is still pretty infamous for its traffic congestion, it was said that to drive from 57th Street to 34th Street could take up to 40 minutes in the early 1900s. Not only was this annoying to motorists, but also for businesses. Luckily, in 1920, Dr. John A. Harris designed a simple two-light signal, which was controlled manually by a police officer, and the 23-block trip went from 40 minutes down to 9. The design caught on, and 2 years later, an architect named Joseph Friedlander was commissioned to design an ornate set of signals for intersections along Fifth Avenue. A little tangent here. I wasn't originally going to include Friedlander in this episode, but the design he used featured a particular Greek deity that seems to be following me throughout episodes. From the story behind Mercury retrograde to last week's The Story Behind Bohemian Rhapsody, his traffic lights were adorned with the figure of the Greek god of travelers, Mercury. The inventor of the 3-signal traffic light we're most familiar with today was named Garrett Morgan, and his is one of the most fascinating stories I've read about an inventor. He was one of 11 children born to Signe and Elizabeth Morgan, who were former slaves in Kentucky. He only had an elementary school education, but paid for private tutoring because he was always interested in how things worked. He moved to Ohio and took a job as a sewing machine repairman, and he was so successful he opened his own repair business. Before his contribution to the history of traffic lights, he patented a number of other inventions, including a chemical hair straightener he actually created as a result of finding a solution for wool becoming scorched when being put through the sewing machines. He also patented a safety hood for breathing in smoke, which became the precursor to modern-day gas masks. And I plan on talking about that more in the Story Behind book. Morgan was the first black man in Cleveland to own a car. At the time, Cleveland's streets were narrow and traffic signals only switched between stop and go, leaving drivers and pedestrians little time to react when it came to avoiding collisions. When Morgan witnessed an accident between 2 carriages, he had the idea for creating 3 signals for motorists and pedestrians, which would include the already established stop and go, but also a warning signal. He received a patent in 1923 for his T-shaped design, which he then sold to General Electric. By the way, if you've ever wondered why red and green are used for stop and go, there are 2 theories. One being that red and green lights on equipment were common, red indicating the machine was stopped and green indicating the machine was running. The other is that red has the longest wavelength of any color on the visible spectrum, meaning it's easier to see from a distance, giving you more time to slow down to a stop. Green, though, was originally used in railway lights to mean caution, but because the wavelength of the color is shorter than that of red and yellow, it looks white from a distance, which caused engineers to mistake the green light as a white star until it was too late. Yellow light is almost as easy to see as red, which is why it's used in many caution signs like school zones or crosswalks. Information for this episode was sourced from History.com, Biography.com, The New York Times, and more links which can be found in the show notes at thestorybehindpodcast.com. This week on Trivia Tuesday in the Story Behind discussion group, we talked a lot about cheetahs. Adam wrote, "I may have heard this before, but it turns out that cheetahs cannot roar. They only meow." Dan commented cheetahs are unable to roar, unlike other large cats, because they are missing the hyoid bone in their necks. And Brett commented that humans have the hyoid bone, and its primary purpose is to anchor the tongue. If you'd like to talk more about the trivia you pick up during the week and have it read on the show, join the Story Behind discussion group on Facebook. And one more reminder, check out livestreamforthecure.com to find out how you can watch the 30 hours of live streaming this weekend and donate to the Cancer Research Foundation with my friends from the Epic Film Guys. And if you haven't yet, go back a few episodes and check out the Story Behind Livestream for the Cure. This episode was brought to you by the Story Behind executive producers who support the show through the Patreon page at patreon.com/thestorybehind. Also, I will be taking off next week to work more on my book, but if you'd like information about that or the episode you heard, go visit thestorybehindpodcast.com. Thanks for listening. The first electric traffic signal was based on why can't I say this? Featured a particular Greek deity that... What? I have diets on the brain. Why can't I say General Electric? General Electric. Huh. I've said it too many times. It sounds weird. Can I just say GE? My audience is smart. They'll know what I'm talking about. Because they are missing the hyoid. Oh my god, all the words are too hard tonight. See, now I worry about pronouncing words because it might be Laurel, could be Yanny. I don't know anymore. It's because they are missing the hyoid.